In Seoul's famous Myeongdong shopping district, store clerks develop a kind of sixth sense. Within seconds of a customer entering, they can often guess where that person is from. Not by language, not by appearance, by something far more subtle, the way they enter a shop. One cosmetic store manager told me, "Japanese customers are different. We know the moment they walk through the door." Today, I want to explore what Korean retail workers have observed and what it reveals about behaviors we rarely question. Myeongdong. For decades, this 0.99 square kilometer district has been the beating heart of Seoul's shopping scene. During its peak years, over 2 million tourists visited Myeongdong every month. Cosmetic stores, fashion boutiques, street food stalls, all competing for attention in narrow alleyways packed with shoppers. The district's transformation is remarkable. In the 1960s, Myeongdong was Seoul's cultural center, home to theaters, cafes, and the city's first department stores. By the 1990s, it had evolved into a fashion hub. And in the 2000s, as K-beauty exploded globally, Myeongdong became ground zero for cosmetics tourism. Visitors from China, Japan, Southeast Asia, and increasingly the West came to buy products they couldn't find at home. The streets became a gauntlet of sales representatives, each trying to lure customers into their stores with samples and discounts. For retailers, Japanese tourists have traditionally been among their most valued customers. Geographic proximity means short flights, sometimes under 2 hours from Tokyo to Seoul. Cultural familiarity makes the experience comfortable. And for years, Japanese visitors came in enormous numbers. At its peak in 2018, over 7.5 million Japanese tourists visited South Korea annually. Many of them made Myeongdong their first stop. The retail response was immediate and practical. Many shops hired Japanese-speaking staff. Signs appeared in Japanese alongside Korean and English. Some stores created VIP programs specifically for Japanese customers. Others adjusted their product lines, stocking items that were popular in Japan but hard to find there. This wasn't just business strategy. It was recognition of something Korean retail workers had noticed over years of observation. Japanese customers behaved differently. I should mention something personal here. When I first heard Korean shop staff talking about their observations of Japanese customers, I felt a mix of curiosity and discomfort. On one hand, I was curious about what they'd noticed. What patterns emerged when you watched thousands of customers from a single country? On the other hand, I worried about generalizations. Not every Japanese person behaves the same way. Cultural observations can slide into stereotypes. Individual variation is enormous. But after speaking with dozens of Korean retail workers, from cosmetics counters to department stores to small family-run boutiques, the patterns they described were remarkably consistent. And interestingly, many of them asked me the same question: why do Japanese people do this? Often, I didn't have an answer. These were behaviors I'd never consciously thought about. They were just normal, part of how I was raised to exist in the world. Let's start at the door. A Myeongdong cosmetics store manager described it this way: "I can identify Japanese customers within 3 seconds of them entering, before they speak, before they look at products, just by how they come through the door." What does she mean? According to multiple shop staff I interviewed, there's a distinct pattern. Many customers enter casually. Some barely acknowledge the staff. Others immediately start touching products or asking questions. Japanese customers, they say, do something different. First, there's a small acknowledgement, a slight bow, sometimes barely perceptible, just a small nod toward whoever is at the entrance. Then there's what one clerk called the pause. They stop just inside the door. They look around. They seem to be assessing where things are, where other customers are standing, how busy we are. Only then do they start moving. Another observation came from a department store employee who has worked the cosmetics floor for over 15 years. Japanese customers move differently. They're aware of their bags, their umbrellas, their belongings. They hold them close or put them in the basket provided. They don't let their things touch the merchandise. She elaborated, "You know how some customers swing their bags as they walk, knocking into displays, or set their wet umbrella on a product shelf? Japanese customers almost never do this. They're conscious of their space." These might seem like tiny details, insignificant behaviors, but for workers who see thousands of customers daily, these patterns become impossible to miss. Another shop owner described the navigation itself. "Watch how Japanese customers move through a crowded store. They don't push, they don't squeeze through narrow gaps. They wait. If someone is looking at a product they want to see, they stand back. They browse something else until that spot clears." She added, "Sometimes I want to tell them, it's okay, just reach past the person, they won't mind. But they won't do it. They'd rather wait." When I heard these descriptions, I had to ask myself, is this true of me? And honestly, I think it is. When I enter a shop, I do pause briefly. I do hold my bag close. I wasn't taught to do this explicitly, but somewhere along the way, I absorbed the idea that entering someone's space requires a moment of adjustment, a kind of invisible greeting. In Japan, there's a concept called negative space, or the meaningful pause. We're taught that what happens between actions matters as much as the actions themselves. Perhaps that pause at the entrance isn't empty. Perhaps it's a moment of recognition. I am entering someone else's space, and I should exist here respectfully. Let's move to the products themselves. Cosmetics testers present an interesting challenge for retailers. They need to be accessible enough for customers to try, but they're also easily damaged or made unhygienic by misuse. I asked Korean cosmetics workers what they observed about how different customers handled testers. A worker at a major Korean beauty brand told me, "Japanese customers always look for the disposable applicator first. They won't apply lipstick directly from the tube. If there's no applicator, they'll ask. If we're out, they'll just not try it. They would rather miss the experience than risk doing something unsanitary." Another observation involved the tester area. When Japanese customers finish testing, they often arrange things back as they found them, sometimes neater. They'll wipe the counter where cream might have spilled. They'll close lids that other customers left open. A shop manager in Myeongdong shared this anecdote. "We had a rush of customers one afternoon. The testers were chaos, lipsticks everywhere, creams with fingerprints, palettes open. When the crowd cleared, I noticed one woman carefully reorganizing the eyeshadow palettes, closing each one, arranging them in order. I thought she worked for us. She didn't. She was just a customer." I asked if she was Japanese. Of course. Why do we do this? I thought about my own behavior. When I use a tester in a shop, I do try to leave it as I found it. If I make a mess, I feel uncomfortable leaving it for someone else to clean. There's a word for this feeling, mottainai. Roughly, the sense that waste is regrettable. But it extends beyond physical waste. Leaving a mess that someone else must clean up, that feels like a waste of their time, their energy. In Japan, students clean their own classrooms. There are no janitors for daily cleaning. It's the student's responsibility. I did this every day from age 6 to 18. Sweep the floor, wipe the desks, empty the trash, take turns cleaning the toilets. The lesson isn't just about keeping things clean. It's about responsibility for shared space. If you make a mess, you clean it up. If you see a mess, you help fix it. Decades later, in a cosmetics store in Seoul, this childhood training apparently persists. Is this unique to Japanese people? Probably not. I've seen considerate customers from many backgrounds. But the consistency of this pattern, the fact that Korean retail workers across dozens of shops describe the same observations, suggests something is being transmitted culturally, not through explicit instruction, but through example, through environment, through 12 years of cleaning classrooms, through an unspoken understanding of shared space. Now let's move to the checkout. The payment process might seem straightforward. Select items, pay, leave. But here too, Korean staff notice distinct patterns. A cashier at a Myeongdong department store described it. Japanese customers handle money differently. They place it on the counter or the tray carefully, facing the same direction. They wait for change patiently. They count it, but discreetly, not in a suspicious way, just confirming. In Japan, cash registers typically include small trays for money exchange. The customer places cash on the tray. The cashier places change on the tray. This avoids hand-to-hand contact, which some consider more respectful. When Japanese customers encounter stores without these trays, they often create the same behavior anyway, placing money down carefully rather than handing it over. She continued, "When they receive the bag, they often bow slightly. Sometimes they say thank you in Korean. They've learned the word. Even if the pronunciation isn't perfect, the effort is there." Another observation involved shopping bags themselves. Many customers grab their bags and leave quickly. Japanese customers tend to check the bag first, make sure nothing is missing, make sure items are secure. Then they bow, thank us, and leave. The whole interaction feels complete. She used that word, complete, and I found it interesting. What makes a transaction feel complete? Perhaps it's not just the exchange of goods for money. Perhaps it's the acknowledgement. I received something from you. I appreciate it. Thank you. I found one observation particularly interesting. When there's a problem, wrong item, price discrepancy, anything, Japanese customers address it very calmly. No raised voices, no accusations. They explain the issue clearly, wait for us to resolve it, and thank us when it's fixed. She added, "I've never had a Japanese customer yell at me. I'm sure it happens sometimes, somewhere, but in 15 years, never in my shop." This made me think about how conflict is handled in Japan. We're generally taught that direct confrontation is unpleasant for everyone involved. Getting what you want shouldn't require making someone else feel bad. There's a phrase, deru kui wa utareru, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. It's not universally positive. This pressure toward harmony can suppress legitimate complaints. People sometimes suffer in silence rather than cause trouble. But in a retail context, it seems to create interactions that workers appreciate. Problems get solved without drama. Both parties save face. Whether this is effective or not, whether it results in better outcomes, that's debatable, but it does seem to create a pattern that service workers notice and apparently appreciate. Here's something I found touching. Several shop workers mentioned that Japanese customers often return to the same store. If they had a good experience, they come back, a cosmetics clerk explained. Sometimes the next day, sometimes on their next trip to Seoul, they'll look for the same staff member who helped them before. One veteran salesperson shared this story. A Japanese woman came to my counter in 2018. She bought several skincare products. She was very polite, asked many questions, thanked me several times. Normal interaction, I thought. Then in 2019, she came back. She remembered my name. She brought me a small gift, a food item from Japan. She said the products had worked well for her skin, and she wanted to thank me personally. I was stunned. This was a customer of a 5-minute interaction a year earlier, but she remembered. She came back, and she brought a gift. The concept of omiyage, bringing gifts when you visit someone, is deeply embedded in Japanese culture. When we travel, we bring back small gifts for colleagues, neighbors, family members. It's not about the value of the gift. It's about the acknowledgement. I thought of you while I was away. But extending this to a shop clerk you met briefly on vacation, that represents something more. A sense that even commercial transactions create a form of relationship, a connection that deserves acknowledgement. Is this good, or is it excessive? I can see arguments both ways. Some might say it's unnecessary. A transaction is just a transaction. Others might say it reflects a beautiful way of moving through the world, treating everyone with consideration. What I can say is that for Korean shop workers who shared these observations, the memory clearly mattered. These small moments of human connection stayed with them for years. Let me be honest about something. Not all interactions between Japanese tourists and Korean shops have been positive. There have been cases of cultural misunderstanding, language barriers causing frustration, and unfortunately, there have been some incidents where Korean shops overcharged or deceived Japanese tourists, problems serious enough that Seoul deployed mystery shoppers to investigate. And on the Japanese side, I'm sure there are tourists who behave badly, who are rude, who push and shove and leave messes behind. No nationality has a monopoly on good behavior. This isn't a story about one culture being better than another. It's a story about patterns of behavior that service workers notice, and what those patterns might reveal about how we're shaped by our environments. When Korean retail workers describe Japanese customers as different, they're not making a judgment about national superiority. These behaviors aren't genetic: polite acknowledgement of staff, orderly movement through space, patient resolution of problems. These behaviors aren't genetic, they're learned. Somewhere in Japanese society, through schools, through families, through the countless small moments of daily life, these patterns are transmitted. And they become so normal, so automatic, that we don't even notice we're doing them, until someone from another culture points it out. The next time I visit a shop, anywhere in the world, I'll probably behave exactly as I always have. I'll pause at the entrance, I'll handle products carefully, I'll bow slightly when I leave. Not because I'm proud of these behaviors, not because I think they make me better, simply because they're part of who I am. Part of how I learn to move through shared spaces. What's interesting is that these patterns can be learned by anyone. They're not mysterious or inaccessible. They're just practices, ways of being considerate that any person can choose to adopt. The pause at the entrance, the awareness of personal space, the small bow of acknowledgement, the effort to leave things as you found them. None of this requires being Japanese. It requires a choice, day after day, to exist considerately in shared spaces. If you've ever worked in retail, I'd love to hear your observations. Do you notice patterns in how different customers behave? What subtle behaviors stand out to you? And if you're Japanese watching this, do these descriptions ring true? Or are they overgeneralizations that miss important nuances? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you'd like to explore more of these cultural observations. And until next time, thank you for watching. トーリストコリア、ミョンドンショッピング、コリアンショップスタッフ観察、ジャパニーズカスタマービヘイビア、ジャパニーズマナー、カルチャラディファレンスジャパンコリア、リテールワーカー観察、ジャパニーズポライトネス、思いやり、ショッピングエティケット、Kビューティートゥーリズム。Hook, 120 words. Introduction, 600 words. Part 1, 650 words. Part 2, 650 words. Part 3, 650 words. Part 4, 450 words. Reflection, 350 words. Outro, 300 words. Total, 4,500 words.